And welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here uh, in a place called Inmendham. Yay. Yeah, it's really nice here. Peaceful and, graceful and smooth. And, yeah, like one of those videos. Anyway, yeah, you're not going to sleep to this video. Probably not. Well, sometimes, maybe. Yeah, I make lots of boring videos, frankly. Anyway, so I was just thinking again. This is the project isn't really talking about the actual subject. The project is how to convince people. Like Smokey the Bear. Only you can prevent kid cancer. Yeah, that's what we need. We need a Smokey the Bear that tells people that. Yeah, this is just about the fact that frankly being alive is scary, okay, and there's a lot of unpleasantness in it. There's going to be all kinds of impulses to do something wrong, like sleep with your best friend's mother or something. All kinds of little weird shit is going to happen, and all kinds of crap, and you could end up in jail, and all kinds of terrible, drug addict, and you end up with some kind of whatever, flagellan's disease or something. And oh, who knows how miserable your life can possibly get. And you just don't bother. And so it's like, the woman had claw hands. And, yes, she endeavored to persevere with her claw hands. Very good, very brave, all of that stuff. I mean, there's movies about that, right? People coming home from the war without any arms and all that kind of stuff. And they endeavor to persevere, and it's very brave and very good of them. But the fact is, it's it's rough, and let's not pretend it's not really hard. It's really nasty. I mean, I had a stroke, and I had to spend a year, trying to get my function back, and it was rough. It was annoying. It was tedious. It was nauseatingly irritating, to try to force these parts to work again because you're really stealing one part of your brain and now you're telling that part it has to do something completely different and it doesn't want to change. So there's all kinds of this crap. But a simple argument is why? Why would you do this? Why would you, in a sense, okay, you can just understand that being vulnerable to getting cancer, right? There's people who have a genetic disease, right, because they inherit it because certain ethnic groups are vulnerable to certain diseases that nobody else gets, like Tay-Sachs and different kinds of diseases. And it's like the same thing. We're all doing that. We're just playing Russian roulette. But we know what diseases we're all going to get. And we're all going to get you're probably going to you're all going to get a probability of cancer and a probability of heart disease and a probability of some kind of thing that's going to make living difficult. And aging is just part of that scenario. Nobody's born who doesn't age. It just is built into the genetic code. And so you might as well be giving your kid claw hands if you're going to give him, you're going to die whether you want to or not. Okay, and somehow you're supposed to figure out that, oh, I want to die because it's the right thing to do. Dying is the right thing to do, so I'll do it. I'll get out of the way so all the young people can have the planet. I'll love it. I'll really enjoy dying. That's what we're supposed to believe, right? If we're supposed to be one of them, okay, that doesn't care about being reasonable and sensible, right? So if you're a religious nut, frankly, or some kind of nut, maybe you think your kid should automatically at some point in its life say, yeah, I don't want to screw the babes anymore and I want to die. And they'll enjoy it. It'll be fun. Like going to Disneyland. I'm going to the graveyard. It's going to be super. That's what they're selling. And you're saying, oh, okay, my obligation is to explain what? Either how that is so fucking crazy that nobody should fall for that, and just explain that, this is all just a mess. I mean, all these animals eating each other is absolutely disgusting. The attrition rate, again, 20 dead birds for every bird flying around. You think that's really good for birds? You think so? You think watching 10 little baby birds squirm on the ground getting eaten by maggots and shit is 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 worth the one bird that'll, you know, fornicate and poop out eggs? Come on. You can't be that cruel. And that's what this subject really is. Like I said, it's like you arguing with the claw lady and saying you don't have kids when they got a chance of giving them the claw hands. Come on. You don't put them through that shit. Do you think that's how you do that out of love? No, you do that out of some weird ego thing that you think all of your other charms are worth it. Oh, well, they'll inherit all of my charms. Well, most of these people who are charming nowadays, they're not charming by birth. They're charming by science. Okay, they had their boobs done, and then they had their eyes done, and then they had their lips done, they had their nose done, had the cheeks done. They're not even them, if you understand. I mean, their baby isn't going to have plastic surgery, okay? So the baby is going to be stuck with their original genetic code, not their modified appearance, and they can't even figure that shit out. So yeah, they're saying, wow, I have to actually do this. I have to actually, make this Smokey the Bear kind of commercial. And that's what I probably should be working on, is maybe 3-minute spots where I try to do that. But I'm really bad at performance art. Now, I could say that I would be pretty good at, see, if all you have to do to be an actor is, especially now, because, it's not as expensive as it used to be, film-wise. And so you could take enough takes, and yeah, one of them I'll get right. But yeah, the whole reading script thing, now that doesn't work. I have to kind of, wing it. You give me a direction to go, I can do it relatively graceful. But if I have to do actual dance steps, oh, forget it. Not going to happen. So I'm really not the man for the job. And that's where AI comes in, right? Because frankly, AI is the man for that job. Okay, you want something to do it without screwing up and making mistakes, and when you just turn the dial and you can fix anything, you make some mistakes somewhere and you get him to do it the right. And, the voice is perfect and there's no ahums or pauses or, or, you know what I mean? Or, No, none of that crap happens. Well, anyway. So I think I might do some more AI videos just because, yeah, it's just rational to try to make commercials to use AI for promotional content because it's a very good spokesperson. I don't think anybody could really argue that AI isn't a very good spokesperson. Okay, it does a very good job of spokespersoning. Okay, where it's not my thing, frankly. But anyway. So yeah, so it's a weird circumstance to be in. I mean, the whole the whole idea of what I'm doing has completely changed in the last 5 years when I realized that, holy shit, everybody's an imbecile. I mean, everybody has got some bizarre shit in their brain that's making them spin in circles and jump up and down and do all this. Their cognitive skills are fucked. They're psychos, frankly. And so you're saying, well, I'm going to go to the nut house and try to have this conversation. I'm going to go to the nut house and try to explain, don't have claw hand kids. Don't do stupid things. And they're the people banging their head against walls. And I'm supposed to explain to them, don't do stupid things. They're not going to get this don't do stupid things argument because they're so fucking stupid. I mean, 10,000 people, like 10,000 a year, die from eating crappy seafood. And you're saying they can't even figure out, oh, that's not very good. Maybe I'll have a banana instead. Because 10,000 people don't die from eating a banana. They can't even figure that out. And those are just the ones that die. Just imagine the number of people who are made gravely ill or, substantially ill. Maybe a year trying to get rid of the parasite that's infected you for this. And you're saying, why would I do this? I like to see the statistic of just, all these little stupid things people can do. Like, let's go on an African safari. And they go to Africa and they get buoy disease or they get whatever, malaria or something. And it'd be just interesting how many people are killed by Africa Adventure Day. they're going to Africa for a week. Yeah, I wonder what the statistics actually are. How many people actually are killed, okay, by thinking this is the thing to do, and then how many are, for life infected with a parasite. That was the thing that happened to Darwin, right? I mean, Darwin's life was decimated, frankly, by his adventures. So the voyages of Darwin, it was this wonderful thing he did for 5 years. Tremendous experience for him as a human in terms of the stuff he saw and the adventures he had. But frankly, I mean, he paid for it for the rest of his fucking life because he could never get rid of the parasites that infected him. And so he was sick for the rest of his fucking life. Is that worth it? Yeah. I wouldn't consider it worth it. Okay, I'd say screw that. If you're going to get, it's like now with ticks and everything, it's, frankly, it's hard to calculate how it could possibly be worth it to do anything. I can't have the same psychology anymore, especially when I got infected again by a tick in a rather civilized area. And you're saying, well, why bother cutting a tree down or doing anything, being a woodsman, doing anything in nature if nature's going to infect you with some fucking parasite that you may never be able to get rid of. I mean, fuck that. But anyway, so this whole thing, these people selling this life adventure, and when you look at the people who are selling it, you're just like, what the hell are you selling? Because they're not. They are essentially claw people. I mean, they have all kinds of disabilities. They're all, hunchy, and they're like Igor. It's like, do you think Igor should breed? I don't think so. I don't think he should have some ambition to make a bunch of super Igors to take over the world. So these aren't even people in a position to feel kind of comfortable with the idea, I'm going to make a superhuman. I'm going to make a Nietzschean mega man. He's going to go out there, a mega woman. They got no reason to think that's what they're going to be making. Come on. They're going to make a loser. And it's just... I mean, to explain to people that the price of that is this ton of suffering and pain. They can't accept that? Ugh. But again, we're right here in the middle of this stupid Olympics crap. And again, nobody makes the argument, but I would love to see the trial. It should be a mock trial where you put the Olympics on trial and you say, has this done mankind any good whatsoever? So we're encouraging people, because we'll all love them and applaud and do all this stuff, to do absolutely insanely useless things. So just come up with something incredibly useless and become the best in the world at it. I actually did this when I was a kid, right? I had a friend who had the Ripley's World Record book or something, and you put pennies on your elbow and stack them and then snatch them. And so we became very good at it because we practiced and practiced, and so we were doing as good as the record book said. But why? Why were we doing something completely useless? I mean, insanely useless. Because this is the system. The system is saying, do that and we will reward you. Okay. But do something like figure out how to cure cancer. Don't bother doing that because there's no reward. We're not gonna, make you a hero. We're not gonna give you 10 cents, And that's the joke here, is that, if we were going to have an Olympics, we should have it for doing things that are really valuable, not things that are useless, insanely useless. So, I mean, I can't even, you could argue that it would be better to have an Olympics for using Photoshop even. You could even have it for using, an app very well, being very efficient in how you use it or something. Something to demonstrate some kind of proficiency. But obviously it should be about science. Do a chemistry thing, do a physics thing, do something that will, in fact, enhance humans' ability to advance into the future. Figure out how to put more bits in the memory, how to make the memory run faster. These kind of things should be the things we reward instead of this crap of jump up and down, spin in circles, do a little funny dance, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's all very beautiful, fine, whatever. I don't want to diss people who spent their whole life being, brilliant at something. But these are stupid things to be brilliant at. They are useless things to be brilliant at. And the fact that nobody could recognize, wow, why are we spending literally hundreds of billions maybe on crappy sports, on achievements that mean nothing, that can't possibly do anything useful. I mean, it's stunningly vacuous and insane. Frank, it's just fucking insane. If aliens could watch us on TV, I mean, it would just be this funny fail TV show. Let's watch humans fail dismally to understand what logic and reasoning is, not to come anywhere close to being sensible or reasonable, because this is proof of it. I mean, this glorification of silly human tricks is crazy. Insanely crazy. I mean, double insanely crazy squared. It's so bad. It's so illogical. It's so goddamn stupid. And nobody... Yeah, the only place you're going to hear this argument is here. Yeah, the only place on earth where somebody is talking about what a fucking farce it is here. There's probably somebody else. But he's probably only got 53 subscribers too. Yeah, because nobody wants to hear how, oh yeah, I'm an asshole. Frankly, they don't want to be described as, as recognizing that, yes, I've invested my life in nonsense. I'm addicted to a silly football soap opera. And that's all it is for people, frankly. It's just a soap opera. They pick a hero and they want their hero to win. And I'm rooting for my underdog. Oh, I hope you win. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's all psychology. And it's really lame psychology. It's the kind of psychology like when you have the impulse to fuck your neighbor's wife or something, where you should be able to say, well, that will just make a big mess. So I'm sure I can find some place else where my penis wants to go. I mean, I just have to ask it, oh, where is there some other chick worth it? And it'll find somebody else, no problem. So I really don't have to make a preposterous mess. Yeah, I could be rational and not make an insanely stupid mess. That's all that's being asked of you, is not to do profoundly stupid. I mean, you can be a little bit stupid, but you don't have to be profoundly stupid. Yeah. I mean, so that's where we're stuck. So I'll see if I can, But, it's really not about the subject, right? Because the subject is obvious, that you don't waste rewards. You don't give rewards to people for doing stupid things. You give rewards to people for doing brilliant things and doing it brilliantly. All right. And the fact that I have to make that argument, that humans still haven't figured out the efficiency of rewarding brilliant instead of rewarding stupid, idiotic, moronic, insanely wasteful. Throw basketball in hoop. Oh, come on. Yeah, that'll do the human race a great deal of good. All life on Earth is so grateful that we're spending so much money throwing basketballs in fucking hoops. All right, I'll be back. Probably. Yeah. All right, back. So, tied my hair back to make a point. So, at some point in my life, I decided to let my hair stay growing. So there was lots of job pressures, different pressures to, confine my hair. Even in one restaurant, it was, an issue between me and the boss. It was either my hair goes or I go kind of thing. And, I wasn't going to play along. And I actually won that argument because I was useful enough that he wasn't going to fire me because I wouldn't play along. And I wouldn't wear, a hairnet or any of that kind of bullshit. Yeah, no, I ain't doing that. But anyway, if the chicks don't got to do it, I wasn't going to do it. But this is the whole thing: is that somehow, for some people, it's a trigger point. So you're saying that your whole life is going to hinge on some stupid thing that couldn't possibly make any real difference, but it makes a difference to people. So it's like you're a whole different person when you're this person than when you're that person. Now, obviously, I can't make much of a dramatic statement anymore because my hair is pretty thin and weak. Okay, so it's nothing like what it used to be. But it makes me a different person. So you can kind of go with Professor Anton used to do that, right? I mean, he had long hair, but he always tied it back when he was making videos. Um, and but this is the stupid thing, right? That these little fucking details are going to decide your fate in the world. And so, the fact is, I probably paid a pretty good price for being keeping my identity the way I wanted it. I said I prefer not messing with the hair. Frankly, it wasn't that controllable, so I couldn't. There wasn't any hair cut that would actually work, and stay consistent, not get all funky and alfalfa, little weird shit sticking up, little crap. So it was just simpler to just let it grow and do this. But again, that decision changes your destiny. I'd be in a different place right now if back when I was whatever 21 years old, I had decided to okay, I want to, keep it under control. I'm not going to let it go, full inmendham. It's just a fact, and it's just why play a game this arbitrary and silly? That all these, little stupid events are going to decide, whether you succeed in life or fail. How much pain and misery you're going to experience is all going to be hinged on just the dumbest, stupidest, bad luck kind of things. Wrong place at the wrong time kind of crap. Who would subject somebody to playing that kind of Russian roulette? Okay, in the sense that all this little nothing stuff, will decide, and the person, could have been, and it won't be. They could have been a contender, but yeah, but they got a splinter and their finger got infected, and so they couldn't be a contender anymore. I mean, it's so ridiculously unfair, and so no deserve anywhere near it. And so what kind of goodwill can you have for your kid when you're basically saying I'm going to let bad variables control their fate? When you don't have the power to ensure they're going to get a just fight, that they're going to be able to put on their good guy suit and do good, and not be annihilated or destroyed or harmed for no good reason. They can play a good game and get what they deserve. So that's another, profoundly important reason to say, why would you subject somebody you love, something you're supposed to love, to that kind of fate? That's just, again, it's just, frankly, it's cruel. So this is the part where they turn off, because they can't accept that that's what it comes down to, that this pro-life position is just pro-cruelty, and they don't want to be called cruel. They don't want to accept the truth that their motivations and their scheming is frankly evil, selfish, and poorly motivated, and doesn't really have anything to do with that concept of love or empathy or respect even. They don't even respect their kids' right, not to be tormented and tortured. Like having to go to a 8th grade graduation ceremony. I almost threw up. I remember that. I was like, oh shit, I do not want to be here. And I also played the trumpet. So you had to be in the band, and then you had to go take your seat. I mean, it was just horrible. Ooh, shudder. Oh, how did I survive? Anyway, God, just life on Earth. So I just I just marvel that people can contrive some sort of overwhelming positive sensation for the human experience. I just don't know where you're getting that from. Because every step you take is loaded with traps, and you got to always be watching because, yeah, it really matters. There's lots of ways to fuck up, and there's lots of ways that won't have anything to do with you making a mistake. The mistake will be is that the world is just set up to trap you, and you're doomed because you were born at the wrong time, and you're going to take 4 steps in the wrong direction and break your leg, so to speak. It's like when a little cat's, went blind. I mean, what is that? I mean, just such a harsh and brutal thing to have happen to a creature. You just imagine what kind of fear and notions they have because they, it's the world has disappeared, and it's just. You let that happen over and over and over again? I think it's a great idea to just have that bad play run over and over and over again. All of that sad, tragic pain wasted over and over and over again. Hard to believe people are that cruel and evil. Yeah, but they are. And that's just, ooh, ooh, that makes me nauseous. Ugh. Ooh. All right, so okay, enough. I'll see if it's just, yeah, I don't know. This is a dismal project I am involved in. Apparently, I didn't think it would be that hard to be reasonable and explain reasonable ideas to people, but it is really difficult because they're very unreasonable, belligerently unreasonable. Only you can prevent painful disability and death. Something like that. Yeah, see, I'm just no good at it. But anyway, maybe if I put a suit on or something, some kind of bear suit or something. Well, AI could do that again, right? I could do the AI thing, could do it, and do it better, and all that. So that's the way to go, frankly. But yeah, it's not a very complicated argument, and it's just annoying that people just really won't reason about what life is. So I guess look, we know half the problem is half the people are lost in some delusion that there's some kind of spiritual stuff and that our souls are flying around somewhere, that somehow our brain isn't a mechanical device with bits in it that make us, that instead it's some kind of wooey thing, okay? That somehow it will endure our failure and death, and it somehow survive. The fingerprint will somehow still be there even though there's no finger. And that this nonsense. So they're always going to be able to create some fake narrative of what it all means in the end, like there's some kind of heaven to go to, and there's some sort of meeting place or something, and we'll all have a drink and laugh, or some kind of crap like that. Like I would hang out with these assholes. Yeah, not no. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, if I went to heaven, I'd commit suicide in heaven, right? I'd find a place to jump off the cloud, with a rope. It's just too silly, just too fucking silly. And I gotta hang out with these assholes forever? Oh, no. Anyway, so yeah, there's not much to say though, because there's nothing, you can't really argue with people who are this desperate to create a fake narrative to live by because it makes them feel better. Now, I understand the feel better part. I mean, I'm always trying to find some way to keep my brain, not tormented or terrified, to stay somewhere out of terror as an emotion. And it's difficult, and and it's it's meaningful in the sense that there's a great deal of difference between being terrified and sick and being this, whatever this is, where, okay, I'm acceptable, I'm tolerable, I can function. Great deal of difference. And so I understand, but I don't think people are fighting for that. I don't think it's that real a deep price they're going to pay for merely accepting that, yeah, life isn't all that, okay? And the idea of me making a new me is just not that important. I can find something else. I can find some peanut butter sandwich or something. I can find something else to do with my time and pointlessly create, and almost, it's not like the thing, you're going to crank the handle and it's going to be a you that pops out of the box. It's going to be some kind of jerk is going to pop out of the box. I mean, the kid is not going to be you. And when you see it in so many cases that the very things, the very ideals, the very things you cherish will probably not be cherished by your child. And they're going to be a very different person than you and have very different values. And they're not going to be, you're not going to be best buddies. It's not the likelihood. It happens, but it's rare rather than common that it works out that way. And there's going to be all kinds of emotional stuff and bullshit that's going to, probably trail you for your whole life in terms of you'll blame your parents for things that, where they were trying their best and just screwed up, or they weren't trying their best. Maybe your parents are going to molest you. Who the hell knows? But there's no point in me talking to people going to molest their kids, right? I mean, if they can't even figure that part out, well, they're really we have no hope of persuading that person to control their impulses, and just recognize that they really don't need to do this pet thing, that they can get through their life, without exposing another living thing to all the perils of existence. And that should be a really easy argument to make, that there's other TV shows to watch besides Married with Children, right? You don't have to do that. You can go ahead and do the married part. I wouldn't even suggest that, frankly. But whatever. It's a social construct. I guess it has all these uses. And that's the sad part of it, is that we can't just choose on our own to define our relationships to other people and just say, this is the person I trust the most. And yeah, we don't have sex, and but we trust each other. And this is the person I have sex with, but I don't really trust her. So, we should be able to just define those relationships ourselves instead of the state having to approve them. But anyway, that's just, you can make an endless number of arguments about what should be and what is. And we're so far from my definitions of all the should be's, right? I mean, everything is just so poorly done by human civilizations. They're all just terrible at being efficient. That's all there is. There's just trying to trying to minimize the losses and maximize the gains. And, they just seem so obsessed with gains that they, will lose it all to try to achieve something that just is, they don't need the gold medal. Once you put it on your wall, you're going to forget it's there. It's just not going to mean anything. But anyway, and even if it brings back a memory, the memories are all going to start to get, you're going to get remiss. It's going to be nostalgic. You'll be thinking about how great your life was 10 years ago, and then, feeling totally disconnected because now your life ain't so great. So, in a lot of cases, there's no point in, going to paradise, for 2 weeks and then going back home and say, Jesus, right, fuck, I live in a shithole. It's not going to make you feel better. It's feel better for 2 weeks and then feel bad for 5 years because, you can't afford to live in paradise and you have to live in shitadise. And, that's no good for you. So, I mean, all these are logical arguments. You're just trying to say to people that life is messy, and our main goal using our brain is to reduce the messiness, to find the stuff that's disorder, and order it. There's books on the floor, and well, books don't do very well on the floor. So, yeah, if there's a shelf, let's put the books on the shelf. You know, uh, you know, just sensible things you do to figure out how it makes the world work better if you can organize it, um, and recognize that there's things that at the moment might seem sensible, and then later it's not going to work out. You can't leave it on the floor, so to speak. I don't know. You're hard to you're playing bowling or something. You have little plastic pins and you're bowling on the floor, and you say, "Well, I want to do that again later, so I'll just leave it out." But then you can think, "Well, yeah, I know, but somebody else has got to use this room in between those times, so it's not really going to work out because they can trip and fall and die, and for what? For bowling? Well, that's a stupid reason to die. So yeah, let's just take 3 minutes to clean it up." I mean, I hate to be a nag like that, but I mean, yeah, these are all mistakes I've made in my life. I've never been um, very good, okay, at all those kind of details, um, in terms of recognizing, and but I've been pretty good in terms of recognizing impositions on other people. I always tried to minimize my impositions on other people. I never, asked them, could you drive me here, or could you do this, could you pick me, if I had some kind of problem, I always tried to work it out on my own without having to inconvenience anybody. Um, but that's probably partly because you don't want to feel, you always want to keep your balances with people where you have the advantage, like where they always owe you and you don't owe anybody else. And so, in a sense, that's not even an admirable thing, right? That's kind of a shitty, kind of psychological piece of crap, where you're trying to keep your advantage, so you can manipulate them in the future, kind of thing. Um, so even when you think you're doing something good, oh, I care about inconveniencing. Well, no, you don't really care about inconveniencing people. You just care about losing some of your power. So you can always figure that, you can always find, if you really look for it, you can find these corruptions in your own ideals and in your own principles where you're really not doing the right thing, because your motivations are just like those negative ones you're trying to convince people not to have. They're just as selfish and greedy and grasping and all of that kind of crap. You're making rationalizations, right? We're all guilty of making excuses for failure. And, you know, that's unpleasant. It's unpleasant to have to realize, oh, I'm cheating. I've cheated my whole life, blah, blah, blah. So maybe it's not a monstrous cheat, but it's a cheat, and it just, there's nothing to feel good about. So the smarter you get, I'm going to argue, right? So if you want your kid to be educated and, somebody who's in the world trying to grok it correctly, the fact is knowledge is not going to be pleasant, because everything you learn about the world and yourself, these things are not going to, there's not going to be revealed some beautiful flower of truth that's going to fly out of your revealing. You're pulling the layers back. You're doing your dissection. The dissection is going to be disgusting. Okay, you're going to find maggots and disease and pus and shit. There's not going to be some beautiful, shining city on a hill isn't going to pop out. It's just not going to happen that way. It's just going to reveal that it's it's ugly and it smells bad, and it's just all going to be pretty negative, because the truth is substantially negative. This is a negative engine, and we are compelled to fight because we are compelled to try to keep our nose above the water, the sludge, the slime, and just eke out our survival. And that's the machine. It's a survival machine, and you shouldn't be duped are played by that DNA molecule. You shouldn't let it do your thinking. Yes, it's doing your impulses. It's creating, you know, emotional drives and provoking. Okay, but it's poking, your psychology. Um, but you clearly have enough intelligence to put that in perspective. You're smart enough to go to the bathroom, you can figure this stuff out. And so you can figure out how to moderate your impulses and your desires and into constructive rather than wasteful pursuit. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that sounds very preachy. But yeah, I guess that's what uh, there's no way to tell somebody the truth, without it coming out preachy, I guess. I don't think there's a way to do that. So anyway, let's see, anything else? Yeah, no, I think that's enough for now. I'll be back later and such, so forth and whatnot. I'm back. So I'm going to change the subject just because, yeah, that happens. So anyway, it's sort of related to the AI subject. So the Mystic was playing with lots of AIs for the last 6 months, mostly written text. And I guess he didn't know about this notebook LM thing because apparently, right after I did the AI videos, he used the same software to make 3 or 4 economics videos. Now they're pretty bad. I don't know why he didn't use his own. He must have some writing on the subject, or he must have something more specific to his points. But he didn't. And so in this video, he's explaining, and it's just the irony of his explanation in light of the fact of our arguments about what the real crisis is, in my opinion, just very interesting. So I haven't played after this. It's just this one point that was, I harped on this point forever, that the government doesn't print cash. So people whine about the Fed. The Fed isn't printing cash. I mean, it is. There's a little extra cash in circulation, but it's a tiny amount compared to the growth in the economy. So yes, it creates a little bit of inflation, but that's exactly what you want, is a little bit of inflation. It's exactly, you don't want money being stored in people's mattresses. That's the last thing you want people to do, is keep their currency in a mattress. All right, you want it in the economy. All right, so that's a simple principle, that a little bit of inflation, 1%. I mean, yes, we go up to 3, we go up to 7, we go up to all kinds of numbers. But a little bit of inflation is exactly what you want to keep money from not being held like a commodity. You don't want money to be like gold, where people store it, okay? You don't want cash to do that, because cash will have all kinds of fluctuations in its value. You want people to constantly want to get rid of their cash and have an asset. Because that'll keep the economy moving, and it'll keep the money flowing, and all of those silly concepts. So anyway, so this whole conversation, we had this whole argument about this idea of what cash is. Like, cash does mean something. The word cash, money, real money, currency. And now he's conceding my point. That yes, this is the real crisis, is when they really do have to start printing cash, is when everything will go to hell. But the real reason why it's going to go to hell is another reason why he doesn't understand the economy at all. So we all know that this deficit spending thing is a thing. Well, the deficit is in the form of bonds. And the trick about bonds is no one actually keeps them in a drawer. Okay? Nobody buys a bond like in the old days, puts it in a drawer somewhere. Nobody does that. What they do is, the people who buy bonds are rich people, okay? And, you never see a commercial anymore for buy U.S. bonds, right? So when I was a kid, there was commercials that were on an insane amount of times, besides just Exxon commercials. There were commercials that were on a lot, and they were always the U.S. government selling bonds and trying to get regular people to buy $20 savings bonds, kind of silly crap like that. And, that all stopped when the racket started. And the racket is that what rich people do is they buy the bond and they take it right to the bank and collateralize it. Because, frankly, it's like a perfect deposit for a bank, right? It's like giving them the deed to the house, okay, in the sense that, and you're guaranteed that the house will be maintained and increase in value at the rate of average inflation. So if your bank is guaranteed that the reselling price can't possibly go down, okay, and you're going to get some hedge against inflation, the bond will grow. Okay, so you own a bond, it grows automatically. And the question is, will it grow as much as inflation or not? That's what you're betting on when you buy a 10-year bond. You're betting that your bond is going to grow faster than inflation. All right, so it's a perfect asset for the bank to say, yes, give me your bond and I'll give you all the cash you want because I have a perfect piece of security. I mean, nearly perfect as a piece of security goes. So even if you oblige the guy to give you a little tiny bit of interest, so you don't give them all, like they put in $1 million and you give them $999,000 back as a loan, the person has basically got now two assets, right? They put the bond in the bank, it still has their name on it, right? And they have the cash they bought the bond with. So now they can just buy another bond and put that in the bank. And now they have two bonds worth $1 million. And they still have their $1 million. And then they can buy a third one and put that in the bank and still have their $1 million. You get it? So obviously that's where all the bonds are. They're just collateralized. No one's actually paid for them, quote unquote. And so a lot of rich people are saying, I'm really super rich because I have 15 US $1 billion bonds in the bank collateralized with my name on them, and I still have most of my money to buy stocks that make even more money. You get it? So as long as the markets go up, yeah, it works. But as soon as they go down, then all of a sudden the money they got back is gone, and they have no way to buy their bond back. They have no way to finance getting their bond back because they have to basically give the money back to get the bond back. So they don't have the money anymore. They can't buy the bonds out of the bank. And so the bank is stuck with the bonds. And obviously, if there's inflation and the inflation is way higher than the growth of the bonds, well, now they bought a house like the bank. It's essentially bought a house that's going to lose half its value. And so now the bank's got to panic because I got to get rid of these houses that are going to lose half their value. And there's no way to get rid of them because who's going to buy a bond? Who's going to buy a house that they have to pay $400,000 for and it's only worth $200,000? I mean, no one's going to buy that house. So that's the real crisis that we're set up for, is that they broke all the systems that are going to prevent the run on the bank, all the systems that, FDIC insurance, there isn't any. So don't pretend. If you think you have FDIC insurance, you have nothing. Because the fund will run out in a millisecond. As soon as there's a tiny run in the bank, the fund is gone. And the only way they could possibly give you your money is they'd have to print it. And that's the key word here. They'd have to print cash. They'd have to put actual cash into circulation. And that's when hyperinflation happens, and that's when everything goes to hell. So he's basically going to admit that right here. He's going to say that's the crisis. And then he says it's better it happened sooner than later. Well, it would be better if it would have happened in 1973. Okay, it would have been better if it happened in 1982. I mean, I guess the market went insane in the 90s, right? That's when the whole, tech thing happened, and all of a sudden the market quadrupled in value. I mean, you have these insane amount of growth in the economy, and it wasn't really any physical growth. All right. And then you had this huge amount of debt. And again, the debt makes rich people richer. So people who don't understand that, rich people love deficit spending because it means they put more bonds in the bank. They get richer and richer. All right. And, not to realize that even. Okay. So anyway, this ought to be a little bit entertaining. For anybody who knows, I've done a ton of economics videos. I've pointed out how they're not printing all that much cash, but the amount of debt is gigantic because they're hiding it. So in the Federal Reserve, where they're supposed to be holding assets, they're holding uncashed checks for the bonds. So there's $6 trillion of spending, okay, essentially bond spending, that we have no way of paying back. So if the crisis happens, the bank goes bankrupt, the bank is going to show up with the uncashed check and say, give me my frickin' $1 billion. And the government's not going to have any way to pay the bank $1 billion, right? I mean, it only collects a couple of trillion a year. I mean, $1 trillion. How is it going to pay the $1 trillion, right? So it owes $6 trillion to the banks. And if the banks fail, how can it pay the $6 trillion to the banks? I mean, it's only collecting $2 trillion of all assets every year. So obviously it can't do that in 1 year. So it would have to print assets to do it. And that's when the printing would get insane. You wouldn't be doubling the amount of cash in circulation. You'd be quadrupling it, quadrupling it. You're talking about, a ton of extra cash put into the economy. And the only way you could take that cash back out is the government has to collect taxes to buy it back out. It has to buy the money out of the economy. And how's it going to collect more taxes when everybody's bankrupt? So that's the big joke. And that's when this crisis will be so damn ugly, because poor people will be destroyed and rich people will be destroyed. And the poor people and the rich people are going to look at the other people stealing their money. They're going to see the government saving people from foreclosure, who bought a house they really can't afford, and saving them from getting kicked out of their house. And then the poor people are going to see the rich people getting bailed out by, let's guarantee their junk bonds. Let's guarantee their shitty decisions, which they did in 2011 when they basically guaranteed all the assets in the stock market that were absolutely of zero value. They saved $6 trillion, $7 trillion worth of losses just to prevent the bankruptcies. Because once the run on the bank starts, then you really have a crisis. So anyway, but that's the real problem. The deficit spending is bad because it's created an inflated size of the economic pie, because people think they own all of this asset. And those bonds are a deficit. They're not an asset. They're nothing. They're not good news. They're really bad news because they can never be paid. If those people who own the bonds go to the bank and say, "Give me my $1 trillion," the government can't pay it. Not for like 100 years. It'll give you a 100-year payment plan. Oh, I can give you $10 today, and maybe I give you 25 next year. Yeah. That's when it's going to get ugly as hell, because a lot of people have to be ruined, and it's going to be who gets ruined. And that's going to be the most ugly part, is the best people. That is the people who lived a responsible life with no debt. Those are the people, who lived a cash life. Those are the people that's going to get destroyed immediately. Their cash is going to be wiped out, and all of their work is going to be wiped out. Their pension, everything, wiped all out by inflation. Really ugly. This isn't going to be, he's talking in such a glib way about this will be ugly because there's no way to fix it. Somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. There are no ways to have a compromise unless you just admit rich people don't need to be as stinking rich. So the fact is, you can inconvenience, and just inconvenience, let's understand, billionaires. They're just inconvenienced if you make them millionaires. That's all they are. They're just inconvenienced. You keep the businesses running, you nationalize, and you just say, fuck you to the billionaires, and just say, no, you don't have any of that fucking shit. Okay, you can have a few $1 million, but you can't have a few $1 billion. That's the easy fix. That's the one that's almost painless. But if you force working class to pay for it, that's going to be, the city is on fire.
Fucking about. It's where, at the moment, for the last, since 2007, 8, 9, we've heard so much about money printing and printing money and money printer go.
No, see, that's the money printer going, but no, that conversation happened in the 70s. I don't know how you missed it. Okay, but I heard that conversation when I was a teenager. Okay, I heard people panicking, okay, about the fact that this deficit is unsustainable, and if we ever have to pay this money back, we can't pay it back without causing hyperinflation. So that argument has been made for 50 or 60 years. The whole time the stock market has been doing this, okay, there have been rational people saying this isn't sustainable. And if it ever does this, there's no way to fix it.
Burr and all that. It's always been absolute and total horseshit.
There you go. Okay, exactly. So, and the real problem are the liabilities. The liabilities accrued over the decades. We just keep borrowing money, and it's how do you pay back if the people, they're run on a bank, people are going to say, I want my $1 trillion, I want my $1 trillion. So you're going to have $40 trillion worth of hands showing up saying, give me my money, and you're going to have $40 to pay the 40 trillion. You're going to have no hope of giving them anything called an asset.
There's been none of it going on. But what will happen when unemployment does hit the high number?
No, it won't be unemployment. It'll be bankruptcy. Okay, that's the simple argument. As soon as the stock market tanks, all of the assets that people have monetized, that they have collateralized, are all of a sudden a huge negative liability, because all of their asset values tank because there's nobody to bid on them anymore. No one's going to be able to pay for a $10 million house. So obviously the bank that holds the mortgage on the $10 million house, they're going to lose $9,678,000 because there's nobody going to buy that fucking piece of shit. And all the normal people houses that are, valued at $500,000, those houses are going to go down to 100,000. So all the banks again are going to be stuck with a ton of liability because the banks own more of these houses. A higher percentage of the houses are owned by banks than are owned by people. Understand that, okay? The mortgages.
Is that the money printer will go burr.
Yeah, there you go.
And there is a real explanation of what money printer goes burr actually is.
Yes, it's the same as the inventing a gold machine. The asset goes way down. So if I invent a planet that has corn on it, right? I find a corn planet, has millions of zillions of fields of corn. Okay, all of a sudden corn prices tank. And the same thing happens to currency. As soon as you print more of it, the value of it tanks. You can't buy anything with it anymore. You can't trade anything for it anymore. Now, if there's an infinite supply of corn, you can't use corn to buy rice. You can't use corn to buy anything else because it won't have any value because it's everywhere.
And it's nothing that we've seen in the last 15, 17 years.
Oh, there's nothing we've seen. We haven't ever seen anything because they've used gimmicks. Again, they blew up all of the protections created after the 30s crash, okay, the Great Depression. So all of the mechanisms they created, even the Federal Reserve was a pretty much a creation. They turned the Federal Reserve into a real monitoring system, and it worked. It was fucking brilliant in a way, okay, because now all the checks had to be cashed in one place, and there was no shenanigans. And it's a brilliant system. And now they've ruined all of those protections against this idea that you're going to end up in a system where you have the assets have no value. Your money has no value.
I've not seen it yet. But as soon as we can get there, the better, because all that's happened...
I'm just saying, we're way past the sooner we can get there, the better. At $20 trillion of debt might have been a good time to try to fix this, but at 50 or 60 trillion dollars worth of assets that don't really exist, but people claim they have an IOU. So we really are in a position where there's IOUs for $1 billion, and there's only assets of $1 million. It's that bad. There's nowhere near any pie. There's no real pie, and everybody says I have a ticket that says I own pie. There's no pie.
Before we get there is all the things that have been happening in the last 15, 17 years. And it's just getting worse and worse. Nothing is happening. There's been no admission by the powers that be that...
Right, and the problem didn't start 15 years ago. The problem started in the 70s when they started deficit spending seriously. I mean, you could blame Jimmy Carter, but Reagan doubled Carter's debt. I mean, there's no point in blaming one of them because every single one of them, Republican or Democrat, just kept piling the deficit up higher and higher. Now, okay, I think Clinton got away with it because of the tech boom. But outside of that little tiny few years where we actually paid the bills, it's been deficit spending all the way down or all the way up. All the way up. And that's the key point here, is everybody had this delusion, because Republicans would say it, oh, deficit spending's horrible, and the fact is, it's not horrible for the rich. It's horrible for the working class who want their money to mean something, but it's not horrible for the rich, because they get richer when we, the people, borrow money. We borrow it from the rich.
They are naked, and as soon as they kind of come out on their platforms dangling around the place, the better. And they can really make the money printer go burr. The last 15, 17 years has shown that having nothing...
We can say that they can't do that. So we all know if they press that button, that's burn the earth to the cinder. So they can't press the burr button. They can't press we're going to print the money, because we know absolutely every single South American example, every single Germany after the fiasco war, the First World War. We know you can't do that, because that's blowing it all up. That means you have to kill people, you have to starve people. It's going to get just ugly as it could possibly get. So you can't hit that button. And the only button you got to hit is you got to figure out who's going to be hurt more by pretending these IOUs mean something, and just saying, forget the IOUs, okay? No more billionaires, no more silly rich people. We don't need them. They're not productive. Be a millionaire. But if you think you're entitled to be a billionaire, just go fuck off, okay? Go to fucking Mars. If you think you can be a billionaire, go to Mars, okay? Because it's not a rational thing to do on this planet.
Changes and just the deficit.
Because the billionaires are the only people that can pay back the money to the government. They're the only ones that can give the government the money to give to everybody else. The billionaires have all the money. They have the vast majority of the IOUs. If they give those to the government, then the government will have those assets, and then it can pay all the people their entitlements. But he will never say anything against rich people. He glorifies them.
Start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is with good employment. The deficits are going bigger and bigger. As soon as the unemployment goes bigger, the deficit's going to blow out of control.
So the employment really doesn't matter, because it's a socialist system underlying everything. You need to give poor people money so they can spend it to make businesses grow. Businesses can't grow if they can't sell their product. Right? It's like what made Ford. Well, Ford was made by the very fact that through financing it could make poor people be able to buy their product, and now they could become bigger and bigger and sell more product. The idea of a business isn't to sell the least amount of product. The idea is to sell the most. So either way, whether the person earns the money or doesn't earn the money, the whole idea is you want them to spend the money. Okay, and yes, it's nice that people would be productive. I mean, it's really great that you have some people that are very productive. They pave your roads, and they make your electricity work and deliver your fuel and do that kind of stuff. And then there's a ton of people who are doing jobs that aren't going to help the economy at all. It's totally unproductive. They're writing shit in their parked car on a piece of paper that nobody will read. Absolute waste. So there's a ton of wasted work. So all of those people doing waste work are the same thing as collecting a welfare check. It's no different. They're just taxing the economy with a bunch of inefficiency.
What are they going to do to save the bank ledger system? The government's got to...
So it's not the ledger system, it's the debt system, and the fact that you can collateralize liabilities. That somehow a liability is a collateralizable thing. Yeah, that's the funny, ironic part.
In and do something. And the only thing that they can do is to actually make the money printer go brr.
Oh, okay, I keep saying it. That's not the only thing they can do. They can make the rich people go rational and just say, forget it, we're not playing anymore. We're not playing insanely rich man, poor man. We're only going to play reasonably rich man, poor man. And if they do that simple change, everything will be just fine.
And then that might just keep us going for a while longer.
So we know it's over. No, as soon as that burr happens, it's all over. Because then everything every asset turns to shit. And everybody is stuck having been ripped off. They paid way too much for everything. So they're all broke. They have to pay back, 100% more than what they bought the stuff for.
Until people just start walking around in, utter shock going, what does this mean? What on earth does it mean? This is real money printer go burr. What's going to happen?
Again, that isn't even an open question. We already know what's going to happen. The fucking civilization burns to the ground.
And nobody knows. Basically.
I know. I'm telling you. Okay, I'm telling you for sure. It all burns to the ground because nothing anymore means anything. Your deed doesn't mean anything, your ownership doesn't mean anything, and there won't be any money to even buy law enforcement to enforce anything. And people will go insane. They're going to get kicked out of their houses, they're going to be living on the street, they're going to steal other people's assets. There's no doubt about what's going to happen, and it's going to get ugly as fuck. You can't print the cash.
The system's fucked, but nobody knows it because nobody's saying it.
Okay, so there's lots of people saying the system's fucked, so that's the irony. But they're thinking it's fucked for the wrong reason. They think it's fucked because there's people collecting welfare. They don't understand, no, it's fucked because there's people called billionaires. That's why it's fucked. There's a stock market that's pretending all these assets are worth gazillions of dollars, and they're not. They're junk bonds. $6 trillion. The government took $6 trillion and put it in the stock market. Can you understand? They, they went and protected the assets from people seeing their real value. That's all they did. They stopped it from being a real number, and they kept it at a fake number.
But soon as the money, they admit it by going money printer go burr and actually printing money and giving it to people because unemployment's 8-9. Let's say.
No, the simple argument is that the people are going to show up. The run on the bank will happen, and the run on the government will happen. And people will say, give me my cash, give me my cash, give me my cash. And the government's not going to have any cash. It has to pay Social Security. It has to pay this. It has to do all this stuff. It can't do any of this. It's already running a deficit. It has no money to pay anybody an IOU. Anybody shows up with an IOU, the government can't pay it because it's already borrowing money to pay the bills it's paying now. So obviously it can't pay the IOU without printing money.
8-9%. They can't run deficits up to 8-9%, so they're going to have to print the money and just give it to people.
All right, well, that can't happen. I'm just saying that will not happen, I'm telling you, just because everybody's got to know that can only happen if they have fireproof suits to wear. So the only people who will ever do that are people who somehow do have a plan to go to Mars, because they're not going to get burned into a cinder when the poor people show up with the pitchforks. Because they're going to show up with the pitchforks, for fuck's sake. We've already seen the run on the Congress, right? We've already seen what a little bit of eccentric rhetoric all of a sudden can motivate people to actually show up at the White House with a pitchfork.
And then we're in a completely new system. And then we can see how that completely new system works.
All right, so there's no new system, all right? Like I said, once you destroy the cash, you have to start all over, like Japan, like Germany. And none of that's starting over. I mean, they don't have, very good documentary films about how that happens. But frankly, Germany is a pretty good story about how, people just starved to death because a loaf of bread was $43,000.
Or doesn't. But we can't keep going with the silly old system of pretending that QE is money printer go burr when it isn't.
It's the same thing, though. It's exactly the same thing in the sense that you're just saying it has to go burr in the future. You're just saying I'm creating the liability. The liability can never be paid with real money. So you're saying, with real assets, you're never going to have the cash in the drawer to pay it. You're never going to have the profits to pay it. So you're never going to have the capital gains or the interest or the anything to be able to pay the liability. It's an unpayable liability. You've just moved it to the future. So that's all they did. This isn't any different. When you create the liability, you aren't doing anything substantially different. You're just saying I can get away with creating the liability now and only them catching me 10 years from now. I can fool them. And that's all we've done, is fool ourselves that somehow unsustainable deficit spending, where the liabilities are still in the economy and they're lurking, just waiting to show up at the bank, say, give me my money. It's all waiting. There's $7 trillion worth of junk bond holders, right? If the stock market goes down, they show up with their guarantee. They just say, give me the money. Is the government going to be able to produce $7 trillion for those junk bonds? No.
What happens is we get to where we are now, of idiots doing idiot things. Okay.
I'm just saying there's no economy. I'm just saying once the economy is gone, chaos is what you're going to have.
How to round this off? I think that just about does it.
This will make the Great Depression look like a common cold. And this is going to be just gigantic in comparison. It's nuclear bomb, regular bomb kind of. It's the amount of hyperinflation is so extreme, okay, that this will create that there's no point in comparing it to earlier examples because it's so much deeper.
Because what happened over the last 15, 17 years after what they call the 2009 or what, 2008 or whatever they call it?
I mean, obviously we had 2008 because we had already made the crisis. The crisis had already been created. And all they came up with is two new gimmicks to get through it. So they ruined FDIC insurance, and then they ruined... what was the other one? So we put $7 trillion in FDIC insurance, so that just wiped that one right out. And what's the other one? And they put all the money in the reserve accounts as uncashed checks. So they came up with gimmicks that you think nobody could ever do that. I mean, it's so dishonest, but they did it. Okay, and they got away with doing it because nobody looked at the record and said, what happened to FDIC insurance? Oh, we had a fund that was, where they had 25% of assets to cover the liabilities, and it went from 25% assets to cover liabilities to 0.004% assets covering liabilities. So there's no fund. The insurance fund is gone. It doesn't exist. It has no hope of paying the realistic liability. So those are the real truth. And the the Fed has now got $6 trillion worth of unpaid checks, uncashed checks, that it has to cash. The Fed has to cash it. The Fed has to get the money from the Treasury to cash those checks.
Has been a farce. It's been a scam. It's been a scandal. But we've kind of muddled through.
Right, so we know the muddling through is on just luck and vapors. That the gimmicks worked, they got us, they keep everything floating. But the simple truth is all the banks now, all banks are too big to fail. So nothing can ever happen rationally anymore. So you have to keep bailing out bad decisions. And you can't keep doing that because with each one of those bailouts, you're creating gimmicks like junk bonds that are guaranteed by the government. I mean, right now we're paying essentially welfare checks to the richest people in the world, okay, protecting them from the bad assets they own. So they didn't have to accept that they made a bad decision in the stock market. The regular common people are covering their bad mistake. They're paying for it with deficits created in funds that shouldn't exist, in the sense that destroying FDIC insurance and putting uncashed checks in the Federal Reserve.
Kind of muddled through, but everything has got worse.
And that's not even counting the 40 trillion of bonds, the real bonds that are still in circulation. You still have 40 trillion of real bonds in circulation, so you're doomed. if the shit hits the fan, I'm just saying everybody's going to want to secure their ownership. And they're not going to be at all comfortable in inflationary times holding a bond. The last thing in the world you want to own is a fucking goddamn bond when there's hyperinflation.
Unemployment isn't bad, but everyone's noticed that being employed doesn't really cut it anymore. Yeah? Something has got to change. Or it's like it's been for 15, 17 years. You can just see everything just sliding down.
Right, and that's because the rich are sliding up. So these are the real curves. The standard of living for the average working person's doing this, and the standard of living for the rich is doing that. They're winning through all of this poor decisions. They're getting hugely wealthy.
So
the more we talk about how the 1% own 50%, by the time we finish saying the word that, well, the 1% own 50%, they own 60. Next year they'll own 70. It doesn't get any better, it just gets worse and worse. And it apparently doesn't matter who's controlling the government, right? The Democrats or the Republicans, they seem to just all applaud that as the way things should be. Rich people should get richer and poor people should get poorer.
If unemployment doesn't rise, either due to AI or just due to companies letting people go.
Again, the ownership of the companies is the problem. The employment in our system, again, it's a very delicate line to talk about how it matters whether people get this minor amount of money as an income compared to the major amount of money that goes into the asset accounts of the rich.
And blaming an AI, all that's going to happen is this grind down, 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 down. I'm saying
the capital gains income is giant, where the employment income is tiny. Okay, the amount of money in the economy from the giant capital gains in the stock market is this. The money, okay, of employment in the economy, that is people who worked for it and spent it, is this. You see these differences? That's the real problem. The rich are getting paid way too much, and the workers are getting paid too little by comparison. I mean, frankly, again, some of these people, I don't even understand how people can't run their life a little bit better. I mean, they're making, $150,000 a year, and they're struggling? What the fuck are you talking about? I could live 25 years on that much money.
Get it right out of control. Deficits will need to rise to pay all the people to stop them rioting on the streets.
Okay, there's no point in talking about the deficits rising because nobody will buy a bond, so you can't borrow the money from anybody. So as soon as you have hyperinflation, you're not going to be able to get any money except through taxes. And obviously, who are you going to tax if everybody's going bankrupt? Especially the rich again. The rich will just write off all their losses and pay zero taxes. So who are you going to tax? Where are you going to get the revenue to pay anything? Oh, that's right. You're going to have no revenue and preposterously huge liabilities. So again, cash will be worth nothing.
There's no money to do it, so they've got to get the money printer to go burr, and we're a whole new paradigm. Oh,
there's no new paradigm. There's cities burning on fire. That's what they'll be.
Okay. The new paradigm of just money printer go burr doesn't make any sense. But the system that is pertinent, that is now extant, the one that's being used now, doesn't make any sense. And it's...
and again, what's the real problem is that too much of the asset value is held by too few people who do absolutely nothing of value. So that's the real problem. So you just take back the money that you stupidly gave to all these assholes who need to control assets, okay, and give people a reasonable expectation of what a comfortable life is, okay? A comfortable life is a few $1,000,000, not hundreds of billions.
There is actually nothing I can find directly that money printer go burr has to be any worse than things are now. Especially.
Okay, so that's the part where you're just saying, how can you be clueless? After all of the examples, I mean, all the South American countries that just had to remake their money, they had to just throw out all the old money, make a new dollar, because the old dollars were useless. I mean, you go into pesos, you can go in then the yen, and then you go to the whole German example. How can you say there's everything will just go on as it's now going when all of these people who have assets are going to have their lives ruined? They're all going to be kicked out of their houses. 50% of the people won't be able to finance their house. There'll be no realistic way to do it. They won't be able to get enough money to buy off a debt that for which they get nothing in return. The house doesn't have any fucking value. Why would they keep paying to own a house that doesn't have any value? Of course they wouldn't. They won't.
As I kind of was predicting in the last cartoony one, as long as they do it together, the G10 or even G20 all get together and say, let's just print up 3% of...
So it doesn't make any sense. They can't print up any world currency. There's no world currency. And again, he thinks this Britain's just left the European Union for not too many great reasons, right? So you're going to tell me that this international banking system is going to figure out who the worst violators are and who the best violators are, who was the most responsible and who was the most irresponsible, and apportion the pain appropriately, when we know that's not going to goddamn happen. So you think there's not going to be a war over who has to pay for these mistakes? Yeah, there's going to be a fucking war over who has to pay for this mistake. People are going to resent the hell out of people they know who bought shit on their credit card, they way overspent, and somehow I'm going to get persecuted because I did the right thing and I, spent appropriately and I didn't buy over my means. I lived a meager life without a whole pile of debt, and I'm going to be punished to pay that asshole? Fuck that. They're going to get pissed off. Okay, the Americans aren't going to want to bail out the French. Not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to bail out Spain. They're not going to want to bail out any of these other countries. So play a different tune, because that tune doesn't sell. Okay, no international organization is going to be able to fix this. The United Nations is the first thing that's going to burn down.
GDP, the deficit, 3% of the deficit, or, So anybody like France is running a 6% deficit. They're allowed to take 3% up, just print that, so it drops down to a handleable 3%. Another country that's running at 3%.
Okay, so it's just crazy that he's suggesting you can print more cash, put it into circulation, and somehow it doesn't destroy the asset value of the cash, that somehow the cash doesn't deflate in value or inflate in terms of its purchasing power. Of course it will. That's the case in every single example in history. There's no case in history where any country printed cash to pay its liabilities and survived. There's no case. Except like Japan. Like I said, if you want a dollar to be, worth a millionth of a penny, yeah, okay.
Deficit can balance the books, because then it's just balanced off by money printer go burr. And you can go for all your panicky stuff that you like in your own head now, how it's all going to go wrong. But all I'm going to say is, have a look around you. How going...
Again, this is exactly why, the 2011 crisis happened, I would argue. Is because there was just a tiny bit of inflation, and that little tiny bit of inflation destroyed the housing market. The bubble burst.
Wrong it is going wrong now, and how wrong do you think it's going to go when in 2026 and 27 AI starts...
Okay, I'm just saying that right now, if you create inflation okay, in this environment, all right, you will cause a bank crisis. And what are you going to do to fix that?
Doing its monster munch into the employment roles. And where's all the money going to come from?
You can't print it. I mean, it's just sticking a knife in your head. I mean, it's a suicide. Printing is suicide. It's never worked. It's can't work. It's the diagram of failure. And I'm just saying, in the extreme of this failure will be so extreme, okay, in the sense that it'll be so quick that everything falls apart because no one's going to want to own a bond. I'm just saying, all of it's coming back to the government. They're not going to be able to borrow money ever again. Okay, that's the end of the video. Okay. I think that was sort of interesting, that he's, basically arguing for my argument, except he still thinks there's no crisis to printing cash. That this really isn't a diagram of complete failure. And that we really don't have, like I said, there's no institutions or no government or anything that even looks like it's close to in place. There's no Roosevelt in the presidency. There's no guy who might be able to get people to calm down and take things carefully and step by step and all of that crap. There's none of that. So I'm just saying, you're not going to have. You have to have somebody in charge who knows you have to keep the food being grown. So even if the farmers aren't making any money, they have to farm. Okay, and everything, you have to keep all the businesses running. You got to keep everything running. Okay, and you're not going to be able to do that with anything else but just recognizing that the government has to mandate it for a few years. And then maybe you'll figure out that you never needed the owners in the first place. I mean, maybe if they actually did that, they would realize we don't need owners. We just need to elect somebody to run a company, okay, and that's it, and collect a reasonable salary for doing it. But we don't need anybody to own these businesses. The owners don't make the business work better. No, they don't do anything useful except suck blood. They're parasites on the economy. And then all of a sudden, no more rich people. Ah, great. No more super rich. And the only people that should be rich are the people who've earned it. People who went to college for 8 extra years, or the people who did this, or, some kind of merit pay. It should be merit pay, shouldn't it? I mean, is that really terribly offensive? I mean, as liberals, they were always running from this concept of merit pay, like these were scary words. It seems like a reasonable concept that everybody should get paid. You should be encouraged to do better, to create something meritorious, to do something meritorious. We all should have that incentive. All right, anyway. So, I'll call that a video and such. So sorry for the people who just hate these continuity changes. Oh, I'm sorry, I've destroyed your whole day because I changed the subject. Well, whatever. Thanks for watching the video anyway, right? So even so somebody who really hates it probably watched the whole video, so I should apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I inconvenienced you. I'll try not to do it in the future. Okay, so till the next time and such. Yeah. All right, it's sometime later, so I can reflect a little. I was just thinking about, again, the fact is that all these things that people think are important, that they chase, that all of that, as you gain more and more time on Earth, you start to appreciate just how frivolous and trivial all the stuff you worried about in different times in your life was just such crap. And all the energy wasted on stuff that really wasn't going to change anything, and it wasn't going to make a difference, and blah blah blah. And that you're just psychologically gamed by existence. And it really is just a fact, I think, that the more real and intelligent your perspective is regarding nonsense like gods, and souls, and all of that rubbish, and just recognize how you're just this, flashlight, and the battery's going to wear out, and you're just a device that is, terminal, and it's, there's no way for it to wind down in, the way they're perceiving it. Okay, this, like I said, this narrative that you become, I don't know what the word to use is, comfortable, with the rules. And no, I think there's lots of people know the rules aren't any good. That it isn't this golden years crap. It isn't this everything's going to be just fine. It's all going to happily ever after. It's just not what the stories produce. Well, anyway, and but we always see it as just a fact that most people are behaving cautiously. They're afraid of where the world's going, frankly, and the way things look so superficial, and it looks like a bad game to a lot of people, an unfair game, and there's no good game to play. It doesn't have anywhere to go. I mean, once you jump a certain height, how can you jump any higher? You're not going to jump a foot higher next year. You know what I mean? They did a 4-minute mile, whatever, 50 years ago, and what they got a 4-minute and 14-second mile. It just doesn't get much better. There's nowhere to go, is the point, and it's sort of run out. And so it's like you say all the stories you can tell, it runs out. They're all formula. It's all versions of Shakespeare, and then you can say it's versions of The Simpsons. You really can't invent much, because it's all been said and done over and over and over again. And to some extent, I guess, I would argue that people do know that as a conclusion, but they don't want to verify it as a conclusion, I guess would be the way of saying it in a way. They won't defend the tragic reality as a statement about life, because they want to somehow justify their existence and their continued investment and their continued striving to achieve. And so they have to pretend there's some point. But there really isn't. They're just pretending. And so that's why most people, I guess, they all say it somehow makes sense for people to have kids, but they don't have kids. That kind of nonsense. So I guess you could argue that there's if you take a poll of people and say, is it should the human race continue to exist? They'll say yes, but they won't do yes. They won't do the behavior necessary for that to happen. And I don't even know if they really want to finance it if it came to that. I mean, if the simple truth was your taxes have to go up for it to happen, I wonder how many people would vote for it then. But it's not presented in that honest way. It's presented in some way as if it's not going to personally cost you anything. And so people think whatever happens is happening to them. So I guess that's part of it too. And therefore they don't have anything at stake. So it's almost, like I said, it's sort of like the slave owner, looking out the window and pretending they're going to be immune. Like they'll always live in the master's house and they'll never be slaves, when that's not how consciousness arrives. And, so it's just kind of silly to think what happens over there isn't real and what's happening here is real. That's how dumb it is. Something like that. Anyway, just threw in some extra 2 cents, because I was here, and so I did it. But yeah, it probably wasn't as cogent, whatever the right word is, well composed a statement as it should have been, or it could have been, maybe. Anyway, doesn't matter. Yeah, okay, it's just part of the video. Okay, some more stuff, words and such. Anyway, so till the next time, yeah, where maybe I'll do a better job, or maybe not. Yeah, you didn't have to pay to be here, you know. It's yeah. So um, I'd hate to say you get what you pay for, but I think, you know, obviously it's the fact is you just can't generate anything that qualifies as a rational counter argument to these facts. I mean the fact that there's no God and the fact that we're just, you know, mouths and anuses, we're just biological machines, and that we're functionally just built to survive and do little else. That's the real agenda. And we're really not here to have a good time, which makes the whole thing really quite ridiculous. And we're certainly not in anything called safe. We're not playing a safe game, you know, a harmless game. There's lots of harm, and it's rough. And unfortunately, nobody really wants to hear the people screaming who are losing, and they just want to hear the people who are laughing, you know, while they're winning. And it's a very uneven picture of reality. Just like your bird feeder is an unreasonable, and you can't conclude that's what life is. Oh, the life is the bird feeder. Well, even if you watch the bird feeder, you can see the stress. You know, the bird that shows up and the other birds are coming for him and he has to run away and blah, blah, blah. You know, but you certainly don't see all the death and the sickness and the disease and the, you know, you don't see the truth. But anyway, enough said. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, till next time. Just, you know. I thought it would be a good idea to add something to the video, but it probably wasn't a good idea. Yeah, okay. My bad. Till the next time and such.